morning. Magandang umaga sa ating lahat. And of course, Dr. Lisa Takanay, Dr. Kim, a lot of our friends from abroad and my fellow Filipinos, magandang umaga. To all of our friends who are first-timers or guests in the Philippines, welcome to the Philippines. I'm very happy to give this speech today regarding social enterprise and movements with regard to the present bill. Let me first give an update on where we are on the present bill, and later on I'm going to share some thoughts regarding inclusive growth and social enterprise. So first of all, I'm most proud when I'm introduced as the only social entrepreneur senator in the Philippines. That's really a source of pride for me because apart from the fact that I hold that very unique category in the Senate, it also goes to show what the main advocacies are that we're pushing for in the Senate. And later on, we'll talk about our legislative agenda and how the present bill forms a part of that larger agenda. Currently, we've already sponsored the committee report for the present bill. That means that it's past the committee level, it's up for interpolations and amendments, and it will go to second reading. My timeline is hopefully before March of next year, we'll have this passed in the Senate. Now, what I've requested the Secretariat to do is to meet a number of senators I've pinpointed who might have some issues with the bill and to talk to them directly and lobby with them directly. And I think that's going to be done on the week of December 9 to December 17. So those of you who are interested to really push this bill further, we'll see you in the Senate and we'll make sure that you have time with the senators to explain the different facets of the bill. My understanding is that there's a general support for it, but some of the specific parts that we're asking for, we might need to give us more explanation for those things. Some senators have said, of course, we'll support it, we'll create an agency in government, or we'll carve out part of the work of the Department of Trade and Industry. But some are a little gun-shy when it comes to the incentives and initiatives. No? So I think this is where we still need to work on. And hopefully, by the end of the year, we will have gotten the support of even more senators in the Philippine Senate. And while that's ongoing, yesterday you had a number of congressmen here. Hopefully, can push it in the lower house, and hopefully, by the middle of 2015, we can have this into law and follow suit with Vietnam. Vietnam actually just passed their social enterprise law yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. No? We can give them a round of applause. And the good part about a lot of you coming from different parts of the world is that we can actually build on what you've already seen. Maybe not follow the same mistakes if there are mistakes, and stand on your shoulders. And hopefully, as we move along, we'll be able to get the best practices from all over the world in terms of our own social enterprise agenda. But what I've always known, because I was in the sector for a number of years before becoming a politician, is that the sector will move, with or without government. And I was telling Dr. Kim earlier and Dr. Takanay that in terms of will the social enterprise sector move without this bill, it definitely will. Because we've moved without government support for the longest time. Right? In fact, the social enterprises we put up had practically zero government support. But my understanding is that what will take us maybe 25 years to achieve with government support, we'll probably be able to achieve in 15 years or in 10 years. So that support is important because our goals are important and because we want to see the inclusive growth that we don't have yet in the Philippines. Okay. So that's enough of the update with the present bill. So today I'll be talking about inclusive growth and why that's the imperative right now in the Philippines. I'm sure other speakers have mentioned this, but I'll quickly mention it again. The Philippines has had the best growth it's had in the past years. In fact, right now, the Philippines has the highest growth in the ASEAN compared to Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, countries that we always perceive to be doing better than the Philippines. We're actually outpacing them in terms of economic growth. And it seems that 2014 will be another year where the Philippines is on top of the ASEAN in terms of economic growth. But this economic growth, though very important and very welcome in our shores, is not translating into a reduction of poverty. If it is translating it maybe less than 2 to 3% in the past 3 years. The same 2 or 3 years where our growth was phenomenally high. So in short, there is growth in the Philippines, but it's not inclusive growth. Now the good thing is, everyone seems to agree on this. No one is challenging this. Even NEDA has said that our main challenge is that inclusive growth is not yet achieved in the Philippines. Even the President in his 2 SONAs ago, 2 State of the Nation addresses ago, even said that inclusive growth is the main challenge that we face. Now, it's not impossible. Inclusive growth is not impossible. In fact, for the Philippines, now is the best time to push for inclusive growth because we have economic growth. Can you imagine the difficulty of pushing for inclusive growth when your economic growth is actually quite low or even negative? So now that there is economic growth in the Philippines, it's imperative upon all of the sectors, government, non-government, social enterprises, to make sure that this growth is indeed inclusive. And it's not impossible. When I first won as a senator in 2013, within the first couple of weeks now, I spoke to Professor Shel Habito, who is a former NEDA secretary and quite a well-known economist in the Philippines. And I asked him, what can unlock inclusive growth in the Philippines? And he said, well, it's simple. You have to unlock the SME growth, the small and medium enterprise growth. And these days, if you talk about SME growth, inevitably, you'll talk about social enterprises as well, and developing community enterprises. So it's very clear to me that if you focus on entrepreneurship, social enterprise, inclusive supply chains, all of these initiatives to really get that effort on the ground to move up, you will unlock that inclusive growth. Personally, I've been part of 2 social enterprises. One is Aquino, and Mark Ruiz was here yesterday. I think he moderated a session. And he's still continuing Aquino with the rest of our board members. Of course, I had to move on from the Senate. The other one I put up is Rags to Riches, which a lot of the Filipinos here are very familiar with because Rags to Riches gets the most press in the Philippines because it deals with fashion items. No? So a lot of the showbiz world is very supportive of Rags to Riches. These are 2 social enterprises that I'm a part of. And these 2 social enterprises also represent what Dr. Dakanay calls the new generation of social enterprises. But to be frank, I don't think that's correct. No? Because when I go around the different provinces, the newer generation of social entrepreneurs are there. And considering that these were launched in the mid-2000s, in many ways, I think we're also now part of the old generation of social enterprises. When I go around and meet the SME groups, the tech entrepreneurs, even the new social entrepreneurs in the Philippines, they're really young, they're really innovative, and you don't have to convince them anymore. In the mid-2000s, when we were setting up Aquino and Rags to Riches, we needed to do a lot of convincing. We needed to convince big business to support us. We needed to convince traditional NGOs to shift models to social enterprise. These days, I think one development in the social enterprise sector is that you don't need to do a lot of convincing anymore. What you need to do now is a lot of capacity building. The mindset is there. The shift towards social enterprise is there. The question now is, do we have enough of the skills to actually make it sustainable and make it work? Now, one model I'd like to share with you, and this is a model that we've been quite busy with because we've been trying to replicate this model in different areas. This is the model of Jollibee Foundation and the Kalasag Farmers Cooperative. These are the farmers of San Jose, Nueva Ecija. San Jose, Nueva Ecija is a municipality north of Manila. It's a farming community, and the main crop of the farmers in this area are onions. Now, their work with Jollibee actually represents an inclusive supply chain, and this is actually even a newer innovation to social enterprise. Now, the push for inclusive supply chains, for CSV, or creating shared value. And Jollibee Foundation, Jollibee Corporation made a huge commitment 8 years ago. And that commitment was to source locally as much as possible. Now, for the non-Filipinos here, Jollibee is our version of McDonald's. And if you walk the streets, you'll see a number of these stores practically in every other corner of the Philippines. Jollibee has a distinction of being the only local fast food chain that beat McDonald's in its own country. So we're quite proud of what Jollibee has achieved. 8 years ago, they made a decision to source their raw materials as much as possible locally and direct from farmers. Now, what they were able to do was they were able to use their supply chain to affect this community in San Jose, Nueva Ecija. And in the first 2 years, they actually experienced numerous problems. In the first 2 years, a lot of them wanted to give up already. But the owners of Jollibee made a commitment to make it work. Their foundation was able to find a good partner, which was CRS, Catholic Relief Services, which acted as the social entrepreneur. They worked with microfinance institutions. The local government was able to provide support. Eventually, the national agencies provided some help as well, and they were able to create a model which has been working for the past 6 years. 2 years of very difficult time in terms of producing the right quality, the right frequency, the right consistency that they needed to buy or they needed to purchase. But 6 years of finally making it work through technology transfer, through values formation, through a lot of financial literacy programs. And they've been able to make this work for the past 6 years. And this farmer entrepreneurship program is one which they're trying to spread to even more of their raw materials and also to get more companies to join their program. Now, what did we see? We saw in the farmers that when we went there, their houses were now made of concrete. Before, it used to be made of wood. Their children were able to go to college, and some even finished college already. They had motorcycles, and some had tricycles. And when we finally left the area, they all took out their cell phones, and we all had a picture taking with each other. So which means they had money for nice cell phones. That actually brought together the different parts of the social economy universe. And we'll show you the model here. On one hand, you have the market, represented by Jollibee Foods Corporation. And it's very important that we look at the market, as social entrepreneurs, that this market engagement and the market the market support is there. So they represented the market. Some of us, we use government as our market, some successfully and not so successfully. And we try to get government procurement to buy our products and services. And part of the present bill actually tries to address that and make it easier for SEs to sell to government. Some of us engage the market directly, like in terms of Happy Lawyer Rags to Riches, where you deal directly with the people who are purchasing the products. Some of us will be working with processors. No? In fact, the Fair Trade organization is here, so some of them will work with the farmers groups and work with fair trade processors to be able to get the raw materials in their supply chain. But this market is really important. And I think one big change between the traditional NGO mentality and the social enterprise mentality is really having that market focus and being able to pinpoint the market, develop that market, and really try to engage the market for your own benefit or for the benefit of your communities. On the other hand, we have the community enterprise, which is the Kalasat farmers. And can you imagine, before, the onion farmers would need to sell through 5 layers before they were able to get their products to the market. And each layer, they would lose part of the value of their produce. So by directly working with the market, the farmers are able to capture a higher value towards the products that they are selling or towards the onions that they are selling. More than that, they did some innovation. Before, they would sell the onions as they harvested it. Now, the women and sometimes their children peel the onions, they put it in plastic bags, they put it in crates, and they deliver straight to the commissary of Jollibee, and capturing the value of that they used to let go of. So, from 5 layers to 1 layer, and that really was able to capture the value for what they did. Take note that Jollibee does not buy at a higher price than what they used to buy from traders or even from importers. They're buying at exactly the same price, but by buying directly, they're actually unlocking the value for the producers. And the traditionally poorest part of the supply chain, which are the farmers, are now able to capture the value that used to be lost to them. So just by reworking that supply chain, you're able to access the farmers. Now, one thing that they've realized is that a corporation working with a farmers group without an intermediary is quite difficult. Because that experience of working with farmers directly, not having the capacity to sell to larger supply chains, was always an experience of a lot of corporations when working with community enterprises. So two things were very important. One was that the co-op was created and that now the farmers are organized into a co-op. But secondly, that there was a social enterprise. Although in this case, the social enterprise is not a traditional social enterprise, but they function like a social enterprise. And this is Catholic Relief Services, or CRS. CRS acted like the social enterprise and worked with the farmers co-op so that they could actually build the capacity to deal directly with the companies. And this is really one area where the SEs play an important role. That they're able, or we're able to link traditionally groups and markets that don't really talk to each other. Because traditionally, the farmers only talk to the traders, and the big companies only either order from the traders or get from their importers. But by bridging this supply chain, getting them to talk to each other, jump 5 layers, the social enterprise at the center of it all makes all of this work, makes that ecosystem work, and manages that ecosystem. Because remember, in the first 2 years, they themselves will say it was really difficult for both parties to make this work. But by the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and now it's the 8th year, they were able to really make it work and capture the value needed. On the other hand, you do have your support systems on the ground. No? One part which really played an important part also was ISEA, which was the microfinance partner. And this is where we get to see different parts of the social economy actually working together and finding their place in this model. We have Jollibee Foundation, which is a corporate foundation, and we're all familiar with corporate foundations in our different countries, where they also play the role. They play the role actually of also trying to bring together the groups. But they also knew that they weren't equipped to deal with the farmers directly. They needed a social entrepreneur on the ground to actually make it work. You have also your national agency and your local agency. The mayor of San Jose Nueva Ecija is Mayor Belena, an award-winning mayor, very, very innovative, very determined, very persistent. And what she brought to the table was the support of the local government. It wasn't necessarily financial support, but just support to lubricate processes and make things easier. And in the Philippines, we always talk about ease of doing business as a big problem we all need to face. And in their case, their local government made it easy for the different players to work together. Then, lastly, is a national agency. And it was in the 2nd or 3rd year, when things were moving along, that the Department of Agriculture gave them a truck, so that now the farmers didn't have to rent a truck or go to a trader to bring their products to the commissary. They could now bring the products themselves through their own truck. So this is a model where you get to see all the parts of a social economy actually working together and finding ways to provide value for the communities, for the marginalized communities. Earlier, we were over breakfast, we were talking about the history of the social economy in the Philippines and how we started with co-ops, then we went to microfinance groups, then now we're at social enterprises. And of course, these days, the buzzword is inclusive supply chain, inclusive business, CSV even, creating shared value. For me, these aren't necessarily separate. They do different functions, but they're not separate in the sense that they have to act independently of each other. If they all work together and come together, that's, I think, when we're really able to unlock the value that we want to unlock for our countrymen and for the marginalized groups that we work with. You also get to see here the role of agencies. And I'm a firm believer that government agencies should not be in the middle of things. At least in the Philippines, I can safely say that it's probably a safer bet to put it in the hands of the social enterprises than in government hands. But government does have a role to play in terms of providing support. Not being an obstacle, first and foremost, but secondly, providing the right support in different ways. And if you're able to get LGUs, the national agencies providing support, your microfinance institutions, your co-ops, your social enterprises, and the market, just as important, working together, you'll be able to unlock the value that we want to unlock. So, becoming a senator was quite a change from being a social entrepreneur. Probably if this was held in a previous year, I'd be sharing what we do in Happinoy, but now Mark gets to do that for us. One of the difficulties, I think, or one of the changes was going from on the ground to policy. And in the first month, we actually put together a policy framework regarding inclusive growth and regarding poverty alleviation. We put together these different bills that we consider our main bills. And each of these actually plays a role in unlocking inclusive growth in the Philippines. And let me give you just an update. Our social value bill has not really moved, to be very frank. But parts of that, or a version of that, is found in the present bill. The present bill is already post-committee, so which means it will be up for interpolations very, very soon. Our youth entrepreneurship bill, which seeks to solve our youth unemployment problems, has passed on third reading in the Senate. And we're just looking for a congressional counterpart to pass it as well. This bill won't only encase financial literacy in our curriculum, but it will also create a fund where young entrepreneurs can borrow from and can draw down from for their own businesses. Because currently, if you're a 17 or 18-year-old Filipino who wants to engage in enterprise, whether a traditional SME or a social enterprise, you probably won't have any place to borrow money from because you don't have any collateral. So this bill will unlock that hopefully. And we've been working with DepEd to actually get the K-11 and K-12 entrepreneur track graduates to be able to access loans from the fund that will be created from the Youth Entrepreneurship Bill, so that our high school students who are taking enterprise in the K-12 will have an opportunity to actually put up a real business as opposed to being purely theoretical. Our Go Negosyo Bill was actually passed, and this is already the Go Negosyo Law, and I'll talk about that later. Our MicroDev Bill, we're in partnership with Congressman Nava and even Congressman Paez on this. And this is our bill to support the microfinance industry. Quite contentious with the Department of Finance, but hopefully by next year, we'll figure it out. We've come into conflict with BIR with regard to the microfinance bill, but you know, we've joined the club of those with issues with on taxation. Yung Pagkain Pinoy, another senator has actually taken this on, that's Senator Po, so she's actually taken that on already, and she's been working with DepEd to support their feeding programs. Lastly is the Fair Competition Bill, which people wonder, what's the connection with poverty and our competition policy? The truth is, in the Philippines, we don't have a competition policy, and that's why largely our economy is controlled. But hopefully, by pushing for a competition policy in the Philippines, we'll be able to unlock our economy, create a level playing field for SMEs, for large companies, and make sure that no dominant player is actually abusing their position in the market. This will be a big help for your fair trade organizations. This will be a big help for your farmers groups, for all of the small players, for the co-ops, because they'll be able to compete in a market that is more level rather than one where the big players are always edging out the small players. This is a highly contentious bill. Extremely contentious. This is the bill that we've gone through where our interpolations last for 3 and 4 hours. We're already at the period of individual amendments, and we took the individual amendments of Senator Villar yesterday. We'll be taking more of Senator Villar's amendments and Senator Osmeña's amendments next week. And I'm hoping that the version that we're able to pass is still one which encases our competition policy and the level playing field in our market properly. So please, bantayan niyo po yan because this is a very important bill. The bill that I was able to get passed last year was the Go Negosyo Bill. And we call it the Go Negosyo Law these days. Very proud of this bill. Because this basically entrepreneur support in the Philippines in actual, tangible ways. There are a lot of aspects of the Go Negosyo Law, but probably the most important one is that the Go Negosyo Law mandates that every local government in the Philippines needs to put up an enterprise sector for our entrepreneurs. A physical space where our micro, small entrepreneurs, our social entrepreneurs can go, can seek for support in terms of financing, training, market linkage, and be that place where entrepreneurs are welcome. a lot of the entrepreneurs will say that the way that they relate with government is always adversarial as opposed to one of partnership. And we're trying to change that mindset or change that policy by putting together centers where we're open for business and we're very welcoming of entrepreneurs. We actually were able to do the first one. This is just 2 weeks ago, or last week, no? Or was it last week? 2 weeks ago. This was just 2 weeks ago. This is the first enterprise center. Negosyo is Filipino and Spanish for business. So this is your local business center specifically created for micro and small entrepreneurs, which will include our farmers cooperatives, our farmers groups, your social enterprises, your NGOs who want to put a business model. This is created really to support our sector and make sure that on the ground, there is a place that you can go to, maybe even volunteer your support or your help, and at the same time, get the help and support that you need. Now, when we put together this negosyo center, the idea, of course, in the law it says SME, but the way I see it, most of us here are SMEs anyway. No? And that aspect of working with farmers groups, working with small and medium enterprises, working with social enterprises, the centers are there for that purpose. And what we've committed to, and this is already going beyond the work of a legislator, is to make sure that these centers are run properly. We're actually responsible for putting together the manuals for the centers and the training of the center heads. And for all of you SEs here, you know that if our office is doing the training, it will of course have the gospel of social enterprise and inclusive supply chains and inclusive business and creating shared value. So this is our way of being able to spread the innovations that our sector is doing, the mindset that our sector has when it comes to enterprise, and integrating that with current government structures. Because, to be very frank, government is not yet there. The mindset of government with regard to creating shared value, social enterprise, inclusive supply chain, it's not completely there. But we do have places where we can begin. And this is a place where we can begin. We have 6 for 2014, we have 100 for 2015. And the goal is, by the end of my term, which is 2019, we can actually mabantay natin sa budget. We can actually make sure that in the budget, we do have enough support for these centers. And hopefully, before the end of my term, which is 2019, we'll be able to see this in most places in the Philippines through LGU support. So now, the support for your entrepreneurs don't have to be concentrated in Metro Manila. Or they won't have to be concentrated in the national agencies. No? They can actually be on a local level, where you get the local DTI, the local government, and a private sector partner, which could be any of your institutions actually, to work on the ground and create that benefit package or support package for our entrepreneurs. And this is one way we've been pushing to really push the agenda of pushing for entrepreneurship and support for social entrepreneurs here in the Philippines. Now, the way I see it, this bill is not enough. No? It's one piece. Even the present bill is not enough. It's also just one piece. But altogether, supporting our microfinance sector, creating the framework for social enterprises, putting together these centers on the ground, having the competition bill on a macro level, all of this put together, hopefully will push for inclusive growth. It's not going to be one bill. It's going to be multiple bills, it's going to be multiple programs, it's going to be you continuing your work, government doing its share, and the private sector, the markets, actually tweaking or changing their operations to actually support communities and marginalized communities better. It's all of that put together. It's not impossible. It's not easy, definitely. And all of us here who have worked in communities, we know that it's not easy, but it's possible. In the same way that your social enterprises were able to get a lot of successes through the years, and I've experienced that through both Aquino and Rags to Riches. This is possible if we're able to really put it together. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 1 year, but we've committed to make this work and make this happen. Which is why every time Dr. Dakanay says that I'm the champion of social enterprise, kinikilig po ako doon. In English, I'm titillated by that statement that I'm the champion of social enterprise. Because indeed, that is the role that I see for myself and the role that we need to hopefully we'll be able to get this passed. The good thing is, I'm not the only one. You're all champions for social enterprise as well. And even in Congress, we do have congressmen and senators who do understand what we're doing. maybe in 2014, it's just a few, but maybe by 2019, more than half of them will also be with us. No? At some point, we can follow suit with Vietnam, who has a social enterprise law already through their parliament, or like Korea, which has a social enterprise agency, which is quite a rich agency, if I may say so. Right now, napakalit ng budget natin, but I'm very hopeful that things can get done. In the same way that when most of us started, we had nothing. No? When Happy Noy Rats just started, we had nothing. No? Zero, di ba? Sa totoo lang po, laway lang. No? All we had was a good story, a good idea. But we were able to get to where we got, and we were able to help people. And I guess that spirit is still there. That in the same way, we never lost hope. And all of us have experienced extreme difficulty. We never lost hope, and we just continued doing the work. In the same way, that's the type of mindset I'm trying to use in the Senate. Government work is definitely not easy. It can be very frustrating. But in the same way that as a social entrepreneur, I'll speak in Tagalog first. Hindi mo iniisip yung mga paghihirap, talagang tuloy-tuloy ka lang sa trabaho. No? In the same way, you can overcome all of these obstacles, and we'll be able to overcome all of these difficulties if we all work together and for all together in this journey. I don't really, in the same way that when we started Happy Noy Rats Riches, we didn't see it as an overnight sensation. We didn't see it as something that was a fly-by-night or a flash-in-the-pan activity. It was a journey that you undertake with your community, you undertake with your partners and your board members. And, like any journey, there are times when it's difficult, there are times when it's happy and joyous, and there are times when it can get frustrating. But because it's a journey, you know that you just have to keep on moving forward. So in the same sense, for all of these bills, we'll take it a step at a time. We'll tackle it one step at a time. We are able to get the Go Negosyo law passed, and we're committed to making sure these centers are not just pieces of tarpaulin and a brick building, but really functioning enterprise centers, similar to what we saw in Taiwan, actually. And so on with the rest of the bills. And hopefully, every year, when if Dr. Lacanay will invite me again, every year I can give you an update that this year, we passed the present bill, we passed the competition law, we passed the youth entrepreneurship bill. In the following year, we can talk again about further updates. And I'm still hopeful. And I think that hope is something that's in our sector. Because we wouldn't be where we are if difficulties scared us away. Because we face difficulties every day, and we don't stop doing our work. So I'm hoping that that spirit is still the same spirit I bring to the Senate. So let me just thank the organizers again. Maraming salamat po. Thank you for giving me this time, and good luck to everyone. Salamat po. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Bam Aquino, for partnerships and multiple policy and legislative initiatives for inclusive growth. At this point, let me ask Dr. Lacanay and Bamba